All right, we're joining UFC welterweight Alex Morono, who's back and actually on a big UFC 313 card. Alex, how's it going, man?
And good. I actually just got home from a pretty good training session.
Obviously coming off the back-to-back losses, like just kind of quickly on those, like what do you kind of take away from those past two performances for you?
Yeah, man, that last fight against D-Rod, I definitely did more damage and landed way more head strikes. I thought I was going to win that decision. That was a bummer. I felt like I performed very well. Didn't really get touched with much. Sucks to lose a split always. And in the fight before that with Nico, I had some weird personal post weigh-in issues. They were all mistakes on my end, like no excuses. But those were definitely two fights I like could have, and in my mind should have won, and just made some minor mistakes. So, I mean, I'm sharper and stronger than ever. Looking forward to getting back in there.
Uh, does that help like motivate you? I know you're always training and whatnot, but like this is the first two fight losing streak of your career. Like you never know if it gets to three. Like is that adding a bit of motivation then to the training?
I mean, kind of, I'm like, body, mind, and soul in it to win it every single fight. More than anything, I hate losing just because it's not winning. And then beyond that, also not getting paid the other half my check sucks. But no extra pressure, no more than normal. I mean, it can't get any worse than 100%. So no, same thing, 100%, reason to win and not lose.
And your opponent, Carlos Leal, like how familiar were you with them? Like I actually thought he should have won his debut against Renat, who's a pretty tough opponent. Like how familiar were you with him?
Yeah, I've watched that fight a couple times. Oddly enough, when he fought David Zawada in the PFL, I made sure to watch that fight just to see how Zawada did. And he ended up beating Zawada. But when I fought Zawada, I was able to hit him a lot and not really get hit back. And Leal packed some power. So I was somewhat familiar with him, as a PFL guy. And then I remember also watching his fight against Renat. And yeah, thought decision could have gone his way. But I've watched that fight a couple times back, and like though it was not a great decision, I could see at least how some of the judges gave it to Renat because he was shooting and failing, but keeping some pressure. But I mean, yeah, he's Brazilian Muay Thai guy. I fought a lot of guys like him in the past, so I'm looking forward to this matchup. I think we'll mostly kickbox the whole time.
Yeah, that was kind of my next question. I know you always like fighting the strikers. How excited are you that it is another striker for you?
It's been cool, like naturally, and I grapple every day. But it's made the fight camp at Fortis be really fun because I just get to go like toe to toe with all the solid strikers there. So it's been fun. It's been challenging, but in a different way. I'm not having to go with all these super high level wrestlers every single round, which is kind of nice.
Usual guys you're working with, like Jeff, Uriah, Diego, like all those kind of guys still?
I mean, yeah, for the most part, they have like a new like a crop of like up and coming guys as well who I've been training a lot with. And then naturally, when I'm in Houston, I crush them with the war guys a lot. So I mean, I have all my boys at my gym. So I've had I've had a lot of really good training partners, especially a lot of good like orthodox strikers. So it's been a fun one.
Uh, Back out of the Apex is just the one fight. How excited are you that is on this big card too, and in front of fans in
Yeah,
Vegas?
I actually got like a little misdirection. I remember I got a call from Coach Safe, and he's like, "You're fighting in Vegas in March," and I was like, "Awesome. What's the date?" And he's like, let me get back to you." And I assumed it was at the Apex, and then I got my like contract the next couple days, and it said UFC 313, and I was like, "Oh, it is in Vegas, but it's not at the Apex. It's at the T-Mobile." So yeah, I was really happy to have a crowd, and as much as I love fighting at the Apex, it's cool to also be in Vegas with a crowd on a pay-per-view card. So I mean, for me, it was truly best case scenario.
Pretty decent card too, like especially the top two fights. Like, what's it like to be a part of this card? Like, you have Prayer and Live. I think that's a fight. I think if you ask most UFC fans, that'd probably be like top three, top five fights everyone kind of want to see this year. And then Gaethje Hooker, like those top two are pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, man, pay-per-views are always awesome. The main and co-main are great. I'm actually curious to see like the full card lineup, but yeah, I was happy to be on it. Plus, I think Leal and I have a good style to put on a pretty like entertaining fight.
Obviously, Carlos packs a lot of power. I know you're about as Gerald's come. Do you think though, like the longer the fight goes, the better it is for you? Like we've seen Leal kind of slow down with a couple fights. Like, do you think you will have that cardio advantage over him?
Yeah, for sure. I'm already in excellent shape now. But yeah, especially it was weird for that Nico price. Like, man, my weight cut was just weird, and especially the post weight cut recovery was strange. I was like perma fatigued. That was a weird one, but that was also like the biggest weight cut I ever made, and not because of any reason other than like, I've always been told I was a small weight. I was always a small welterweight, so I put on a lot of size and made a big weight cut down from like 196, and like made the weight no problem. But like the rehydration and recovery, I just kind of didn't dial in as best as I could. So when I fought D-Rod, I came in like 10 pounds lighter. It was an easy weight cut. And after that fight, felt great. So I'm nice and light and quick for this one too. So yeah, I'm really banking on like increasing the pace as the fight goes on.
Yeah, because that fight was so weird because you've been known for like your cardio, and it was like weird. Like after the first round, it already looked like you were kind of slowing down. I was like kind of confused. Like, what? Like, when did you kind of like? Did you know like before going into the fight, like this could be a long one if I don't get him out of there early?
Yeah, the night before, it took me forever to get warmed up, and then the morning of the fight, and then the warm up for the fight, I knew it was going to be a rough one. Like legs were never underneath me, just couldn't get like a rhythm going. It was really unfortunate because I mean that fight too, like when it was over, I like didn't really get hit. I had no damage on my face. I was like, how did I let that slip through my fingers again? And then with the D-Rod fight, I knew that one would be a little bit different as we were pretty much going to box for the 15 minutes. And man, it said he landed more strikes, but if you look at it, I landed like way more head strikes. And they said he landed a lot of body and leg punches and kicks, but not one of them I even felt. So I mean, like you could see the damage on the face differences, and I was pretty effing bummed to lose that decision. Even Coach Safe said he's like, hey, if you stand and box with them, this one's probably going to go to a split no matter how it goes. And sure enough, he was spot on. So I got some like cool tweaks on like when to, just like with output. So I'm going to make sure to just finish strong always.
Something we see a lot with like guys. A lot of the veterans are like kind of just shooting for takedowns to like 30 seconds left, a minute left to try to solidify rounds. Like, is that something you and Safe talked about here? Like, we saw Renat have a bit of success with grappling. You just kind of like try to just win the last little bit of the rounds because it seems like that's a lot what the judges remember is the last like minute compared to like the first minute or two.
Yeah, I mean, maybe so. I don't. I mean, no, I don't. I'm not going to go in there and wrestle too much,
Yeah.
but I mean, just in terms of cadence and like in volume and like knowing where I'm at in the rounds is a big focus on this one.
How do you kind of see this one playing out with you, Carlos? Then
15 minutes of damage, and if I can catch a finish, awesome. Hit and don't get hit. All the classic stuff, man. But I'm looking to get some more octagon time, and if everything goes my way, I'll hopefully take the number 2 spot in welterweight significant strikes. I'm at number 3 right now, and there's less than 100 between me and number 2, who is Kamaru Usman. So I'm looking to take the second spot, and then by the end of the year, be number 1 welterweight significant strikes. That's a cool goal.
is that like kind of your main goal right now? Because I know when we talked, you've always had those goals. It was like what it was like the 20 UFC fights. Then it was now it's I think 20 wins. Like, is that kind of the next goal for you? Is that the most significant strikes?
Yeah, also, if I pull off another guillotine, I'll have the most guillotine wins at welterweight. I'm tied for first right now at 2. So 3 would put me at number 1. And then yeah, significant strikes. It's so funny because I'm a jiu-jitsu coach, and I just think it's the coolest but also funniest thing in the world that my students can say their jiu-jitsu coach has the most significant strikes in the welterweight division. I just think that's really funny and cool.
And you look at like kind of the all-time greats that have fought in the division. Like, what's that like to see your name like kind of right near the leaderboard on a lot of things, like fights, octagon time? Like, you're kind of climbing up there in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. I really feel like I surpassed any expectations like that I had coming in, but especially that like fight fans had coming in. And 34, feel awesome. If I could get another 6 years, my boy Carlos Diego Fiera going strong. He beat that Mateusz that good Polish guy at 39, and that was a big inspiration. So man, if I can do this for another 6 or 7 years, that'd be the dream.
Did you ever think you'd be fighting this long when you started? Like, did you think you would have been retired by now, like when you first started?
You know what? No, I never had any expectations or put any numbers. I didn't even have plans on going to the UFC. Like I really just like wanted to win the legacy title, and then after that happened, I figured the UFC would happen. And then even on the first contract, I was like, all right, let's see, where I can go. I've never ever underprepared for a fight. Like ever since I started fighting as a pro. That's why I love my wife so much because she understands like my mindset. But like everything in life gets put on hold when I'm in fight camp. Like the fight becomes absolute priority number 1. And I have like really surrounded myself with people who understand that, whether it be like my family, my wife, everyone at my gym, like everyone gets it. So I think it's that preparation that's allowed me to have a lot of success. And that certainly is passed down to a lot of my fighters. I have a few guys also on the cusp of the UFC. So give me like 2 more years, and I'm hoping to have like 3 or 4 of my own guys in there as well.
I know we've always talked about. You said like the belt like didn't mean a whole lot to you. Like you'd rather see guys like Jeff win it. Like, and now that you become more of a coach, like is that kind of the next goal? Like post fighting is kind of try to get to see one of your guys that you started with get all the way to the UFC and maybe become a champion.
Man, yeah, that'd be amazing. So like first step is get guys in the UFC, and then second step, get them on their second contract, and then get them ranked. And if I can get them ranked, then we certainly better believe we're going for the title run.
And I think for you too, like you would be a good coach to a lot of guys because like there's a lot of guys that I've talked to, and it is surprising when I tell like my friends or like just fans here where a lot of fighters don't care about the rankings or belt. Like they're just viewing it as a job and like making the most amount of money. And like I think you've kind of done a good job of that of like taking the opportunities. But like obviously when you do that, you got to win. Like, is that something too you teach fighters? It's like this can be like a really financially good thing, even if you don't ever become like that top 10 guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Just activity is so important, and like jumping on opportunities really is. It's funny. I actually just called a friend who's on like a 7 fight finish streak. And I know he's trying to get back in the UFC. So I went through Tapology and I found all the welterweight and middleweight fights and like made a list. And I was like, yo, dude, we have like 13 chances in the next 6 weeks to slip in there. Like, you've been training hard, be ready to rock and roll. So yeah, I mean, jumping on opportunities is critical in the sport. And then also being active. Like that's one thing I was always very grateful for is my body durability has always been really strong. And so I could fight, if they let me 6 times a year, but anytime, something popped up with, a week or 2 weeks notice and I was able to make the weight, I was able to jump on it.
Just two more things. Like, where do you think a win over Carlos puts you in the division? I know you're a guy like you can get a ranked opponent, you get big names, you can kind of fight newcomers in the spot. You can kind of get anyone, but like, where do you think this kind of puts you?
In same spot, I feel like I'm a vet now. Almost like gatekeeper status, which I don't mind. I don't mind that at all. That means a lot of fights and a lot of volume. But more than anyway, I just want the volume. If I could fight like 3 or 4 times this year, that'd be ideal. So a win just gives me more negotiation power on when I can fight again next.
It is weird because like I always see fans like making fun of fighters saying like, oh, they're a gatekeeper, but like being a gatekeeper isn't a bad thing. It means like you're one of the top like 20, 25 guys in the world at a certain weight. Like I think most fighters, if you told that before they started their career, would sign up for that.
Hell yeah. And then like just as like a martial artist, that means I get to fight, the world's best martial artists for a decade and a half. So I mean, just like in terms of like what I think like strong achievements go for, like as a martial artist, it doesn't get any better than fighting the UFC. And then it doesn't get any better than fighting the UFC for a long time. So I mean, that's always been the plan, and I'm gonna keep it that way.
Just final thing. I know you're fine with kind of fighting whoever, but you have fought a lot of those legends. Like, is there any of those guys left that before your career, before their career is up, that you want to fight?
Man, nowadays, I feel like we've seen like a real like cycle, a generation cycle. I couldn't tell you anyone off the top of my head. I mean, now it's I think everyone in like the top 10, top 15 is like a pretty modern era, kind of like the older guys being kind of in my generation. There's not a lot of guys who are still around from the generation prior. I'm talking like Carlos Condit,
Yeah.
Robbie, and like Damian Maya. Like those guys have all been out for a while, and so I think it's just like pretty prime pickings. No matter you fight, you either fight like a tough new guy or like a tough veteran. But all these vets are like kind of new school. You know what I mean?
One fight I think would be fun, like just down the line between you two, is you and Wonder Boy. I just think your striking fight would be very cool to see.
I've always thought that myself. That would be awesome. Plus, like I've always wanted to headline an Apex card, and I think that would be a perfect headliner. And again, like as a martial artist, fighting a guy like Wonder Boy would be super challenging, but also awesome. And yeah, hey man, you got my vote for that one as well.
Well, Alex, I appreciate the time as always. Thanks so much for doing this again.
Yeah, you got it, man. Anytime.